Near the end of the last video, we met once more with the Emerald Herald, and in our last conversation with this character, we learned a bit more about where her loyalties lie, and that is to the ancient dragons. And there is a very good reason for this, a reason which is expanded upon in the Aged Feather, the item the Emerald Herald gave us when we arrived at the Dragon Aerie. The child of the dragon, sequestered away from the world, imagined a world of boundless possibilities from the mere sight of a feather. So this feather gave the Emerald Herald hope and sparked her imagination when she was but a child. But it is more than a mere bird feather, as it allows us to travel between bonfires limitlessly. So with this in mind, this makes the Homeward Bones, an item we used to return to the bonfires previously, pretty much obsolete, because we can repeatedly use this feather. There are some subtle hints that it might be possibly Arya who raised or maybe even created the Emerald Herald. This is definitely just me theorizing here, but it is a distinct possibility, and one that's interesting to think about. I have to say that the Dragon Aerie is far and away one of my favorite areas in the entire Souls series. I just think the Dragon Aerie is so atmospheric, and I love seeing the drakes flying off in the distance and sometimes right up next to you, or in some cases where you have to fight them. I'm a sucker for dragons. There's no question about that, and any area in a RPG or any sort of game that revolves around dragons is going to be very interesting to me, and the Dragon Aerie is definitely very interesting. Just visually, it's definitely one of the most impressive areas in the series. I think it's right up there with Ash Lake, the Shrine of Amana, and Anor Londo for me. It's just an incredible looking area, and I always look forward to getting to this place in each playthrough. Now, there definitely are some challenging parts about this area, particularly in the Scholar of the First Sin. They put a lot more of those exploding zombies in here, which isn't quite as fun as the vanilla version, but I still think the area itself is very fun to go through. There is a Dragon Aerie in Dark Souls 3 as well, but it doesn't come nearly as close to the magnificence of the Dragon Aerie in Dark Souls 2, at least in my opinion. And once we get through the Aerie, we'll arrive at the Dragon Shrine, where we will meet the ancient dragon that the Emerald Herald told us about. Since this is the first time in my playthrough, or at least I believe it's my first time, that my weapons and armor have broken or come near to breaking, I thought it'd be fun to bring up the weapon and armor durability of Dark Souls 2. This is a very divisive point among the community, I know, just because your weapons in particular degrade so quickly in this game. Especially certain weapons just have like very little durability, and they'll break very easily if you're careful. However, unlike the first game, all your durability is repaired at a bonfire, so long as the item itself isn't broken. And this is different from Dark Souls 1, where you actually had to repair the item. It didn't matter if you slept at a bonfire or not, you had to repair it. And this only occasionally affected weapons and armor in the first game, but it was a very neat part of the system, and I liked how they tried to do something different with Dark Souls 2. It's not quite as balanced as I would like it to be. I sometimes feel like your weapons degrade just a bit too quickly, but I do like how there is more tension, so to speak, in protecting your gear. I think that is important, because in Dark Souls 3, I can't even think of one instance where my weapons and armor broke. It has never happened across my multiple playthroughs of that game, and while I don't want my weapons and armor to break exactly, it is a gameplay aspect I feel they completely dropped the ball on in the third game, because durability has almost no effect in that game, at least as far as I can tell. While the durability system in Dark Souls 2 isn't perfect, I actually have to say it might be my favorite of the series. That's probably going to be an unpopular opinion among the fans, but I do like how this game encourages you to switch up your weapons and armor sets and use different things in battle to switch out the durability for whatever equipment you're currently using. That way, there is more variety in what weapons and armor sets you use, and as you can tell throughout my playthrough, I've been kind of shifting between armor sets just because I like to keep mixing things up, and that's one thing Dark Souls 2 encourages, and I think that's why I like it. As I said, it's not a perfect system, but I still do find it quite enjoyable.
this dreadfully twisted world. Peace grants men the illusion of life. Shackled by falsehoods, they yearn for love, unaware of its grand illusion. Until a curse touches their flesh. We are bound by this yoke. As true as the dark that churns within men. All men trust fully the illusion of life. But is this so wrong? A construction facade, and yet a world full of warmth and scandals. No, are you intent on shattering the yoke, spoiling this wonderful form scheme? I am Arya. I sought to shed the yoke of fate, but failed. Now, I am your answer. Seek the throne. Seek light, dark, and what lies beyond.
And now we know the true identity of the Scholar of the First Sin, Lord Arya. This was an incredible discovery in the Scholar of the First Sin expansion for this game, because in the original version of Dark Souls 2, one of the most enigmatic characters in the entire game was Lord Arya. People were always wondering what happened to him, where is he? Is he still alive? Because the lore wasn't exactly clear, and I know some people even theorized that the ancient dragon we're about to meet was some kind of incarnation of Lord Arya. We now know this to be false, and there is multiple evidence to that, and some I'll explore later in another video. But the fact that Arya is this being known as the Scholar of the First Sin is very, very interesting to me. And he brings something very fascinating to the lore of Dark Souls, not just Dark Souls 2, but the entire series. He tried to shed the yoke of fate. He tried to break the cycle of the world, to try to prevent it from happening to future generations of the world, or just ending it altogether. He wanted to end the cycle of light and dark, and the curse of the undead, and everything that revolved around it. But it did not work out as he hoped, and instead of shedding the yoke of the cycle, he essentially removed himself from it. He is now outside of the cycle. He is now just an observer, one who can't directly affect what is going to happen anymore, but he still wants to influence what is going to happen. So Arya, like Vendrick, tried to find a way to break the curse. But unlike Vendrick, he tried more fantastic and sometimes forbidden means of doing so, and his current form is the result of that. He is no longer the man he once was, but this gnarled monstrosity. I don't really know how else to describe him, that he's just now trying to find a better course for the world, one beyond the scope of light and dark. But what does lie beyond those two concepts? That is something that is very intriguing to think about, especially within the setting of this world. So this is the last time we'll meet Arya, the Scholar of the First Sin, before the endgame. But in order to meet him that one last time, there are a couple of requirements we have to fulfill, and that is namely defeating what remains of King Vendrick and claiming his crown. But for this playthrough, we're not only going to claim Vendrick's crown, but the other lost crowns as well. The crown of the Ivory King, the crown of the Old Iron King, and the crown of the Sunken King. And once we complete the rest of the base game, we'll proceed to those areas, which are DLC expansion packs for Dark Souls 2. But for now, let us continue our journey into the Dragon Shrine. These giant armored beings we're fighting are the Drake Keepers. It's possible they might have been once human, or it's possible these suits of armor are just enchanted and are servants to the will of the dragons and those who serve the dragons. The Drake Keeper's great hammer reads, an extremely sturdy pitch-black great hammer. Colossal warriors staunchly watch over the shrine, ready to defend its resident, or allow one worthy enough to be granted audience. And this is indeed true because, with the exception of the Sword and Shield Drake Keepers, the rest of the Drake Keepers put up quite a fight, particularly the one with the Great Hammer. Jeez Louise, that guy never lets me get a hit and he just continues to smack me with his giant hammer. Anyways, as you can tell, there are lots of knights in servitude to the dragon that resides here at the shrine. What's interesting here, some of the men who are in the smaller dragon armor sets have some very interesting lore implications about where this servitude to the dragons may have started. The Black Dragon set reads, an eerily shaped armor spoken of in legend, crafted with scales of the Black Dragon. The Black Dragon was long considered a mere legend, but this proves its existence. And this is a really cool callback to the Artorias of the Abyss expansion of the original Dark Souls, because in that, one of the optional bosses, and in my opinion the hardest boss in the entire game, was Black Dragon Calamite. In legend, this oddly shaped long sword is said to be forged from the Black Dragon's tail. As it is told, the Black Dragon lost its tail to a brave warrior in a magnificent battle, and the tail was later used to forge several legendary weapons. So this basically makes it canon that the chosen undead back in the original Dark Souls did in fact defeat Black Dragon Calamite, and in the process cut off his tail, which is a thing you could do to dragons in that game. If you cut off one of the dragon boss's tail, you would get a special weapon. So it's a nice callback to that as well. So I just find it very fascinating how the Black Dragon Calamite still holds so much influence all this time after his death. While it may not be the current dragon these followers are worshipping, that might have been the start of it, that Black Dragon Calamite was so powerful and so feared that he just inspired a legion of followers to his side. So, again, this is me theorizing about that, but it is hinted at, and it is very cool to think about. Now, I won't go too much into depth about the Ancient Dragon for this video, as we'll end once we finish talking to him, but I will talk about him a bit more in the next chapter, because there is some really interesting and very curious lore stuff behind the Ancient Dragon. But to finish off, let us meet with the Ancient Dragon of the Dragon Shrine. One who will bring us even closer to our ultimate goal of the Throne of Want.